Ladies and gentlemen, Rick Guidotti.
Well, how exciting. Hi, everybody. This is a thrill to be here. So can I get my slides? Hopefully, there we go. So hi, I'm so thrilled to be here. I am the founder of Positive Exposure, a nonprofit organization that promotes a more inclusive world through photography, through film, and through educational programs. Yay! So I started my career as a fashion photographer, working with clients like Harper's Bazaar and Elle and Marie Claire. Here, of course, here's Claudia Schiffer from a Harper's Bazaar shoot, Elle magazine, Marie Claire magazine. I did a lot of work for the House of Yves Saint Laurent in Paris. I was based in New York City, but I lived in Milan and Paris for several years. This is a portrait of Mr. Saint Laurent that's in every boutique worldwide, and an image from one of our global campaigns. French Elle magazine. Here's, of course, New York Style magazine. French Elle once again. And of course, here's the amazing Cindy Crawford from a Revlon shoot. Amazing work. Thank you. It was so exciting working in the industry, working with these great models and these great clients. But it was also really frustrating because I was always told who was beautiful. I was told who the face of the season was, and we'd run and photograph that face, and it would change the next season, and we'd photograph that face. What was so frustrating is, as an artist, I continue never to see beauty on the covers of magazines only. Beauty exists everywhere around us. It's amazing to see that. So as I was leaving my studio one afternoon after doing a casting for Elle magazine, I was walking down Park Avenue. I spotted this gorgeous kid waiting for a bus. She had white hair, pale skin. She had this genetic condition called albinism. Albino was the common term. She was so stunning, yet never included in the beauty standard. I never met a model that looked like this gorgeous kid. The bus came, she got on, and I knew I needed to find photographs of this gorgeous kid or friends of hers that shared the same genetic condition, albinism. So I went to the School of Visual Arts in New York City. I studied photography, film, and art. So I never saw a medical textbook prior to that moment, but I thought that's where these images would be. So I went to the closest Barnes & Noble, grabbed my first medical textbook, opened albinism, so excited to find images of this gorgeous kid, but instead I found these images. The image with under the eye photograph was captioned the albino eye. This kid didn't have bright red eyes, she had beautiful blue eyes. Then I saw countless images of kids in cancer clinics and open sores and cancers. I'm thinking, this is scary. And then I saw thousands of photographs of not just kids with albinism, but many other genetic condition and diagnosis, all presented the same way, usually naked or in their underwear, in doctors' offices with those black bars across their eyes. Terrifying images. I closed that medical textbook, put it back on the shelf, hoping to never see another medical textbook for the rest of my life. So I went to an encyclopedia thinking, that's where they'll be. But instead, I found the family in the circus. And the more exploring I did, the more digging I did, the more negative representation I could only find. Certainly from Hollywood, from The Princess Bride to Powder, who had albinism because his mother was struck by lightning when she was pregnant with him, to The Matrix Reloaded. There were these ghost-like characters that come in, they'd wreak havoc, and then they just simply disappear. To even most recently, the Da Vinci Code. It was evil Silas driving around Paris at night shooting at people. One of the first things I discovered in my research about albinism is that people with this genetic condition have a visual impairment. Most people with albinism are considered legally blind, so certainly would not be driving around Paris at night shooting at anything and expect to hit any of those targets. The information out there was terrible. But then I saw there was a support group called NOAA, the National Organization for Albinism and Hypopigmentation, a support group for these gorgeous kids and their families. So I called them and I was so excited. I'm like, hey, I'm a fashion photographer. Let's show the world the beauty of albinism. This is going to be amazing. They said, get lost. You know, I'm a New Yorker, I don't give up quite so easily, but they made it very clear to me early days about their fear of exploitation. That every time there was a magazine article about a kid with albinism, it was always the story about a victim. It was always negative, it was always sensational, always exploitative. And I said, well, I have to agree with you. I can't find one positive representation anywhere. So let's do something strange here. Let's form a non-traditional partnership. Fashion photographer, genetic support group, and together we'll collaborate and create a photographic essay that celebrates the beauty of albinism. And they agreed. I was so excited. Positive Exposure was born that day. In walks my first model. Her name is Christine, and she's gorgeous, 5'9", long white hair. But she walks into my studio with her shoulders hunched, head down, no eye contact, one-word answers. This kid had zero self-esteem as a direct result of the teasing and the bullying and the abuse she experienced every single day in the classroom environment. And it broke my heart to see this gorgeous kid standing in front of me with zero self-esteem. I'm thinking, how am I going to photograph her? But just the day before, I had photographed Cindy Crawford for another Revlon shoot on the same set in my studio, and I thought, out of respect for this gorgeous kid, I'm going to photograph her like I would any supermodel. So the fan went on, the music went on, and I literally grabbed the mirror that was next to the set, and I held it up there, and I said, Christine, look at yourself. You're magnificent. And this kid standing like this looked in the mirror and saw exactly what I saw. And she then all of a sudden like this, had it in the air, and exploded with a smile that literally lit up New York City. Yay! This gorgeous kid desperately needed to change the way she saw herself. Her community desperately needed to change the way that they saw her difference. So she created a philosophy that drives positive exposure 25 years later. And that philosophy is change how you see how you change. Those first images were a cover story in Life magazine called Redefining Beauty. I got lots of accolades for it, lots of awards for it, but I received an amazing award from the Genetic Alliance. The Genetic Alliance is a coalition of all the genetic support groups worldwide. They're based in DC, and they presented me with the Art of Reporting Award. Great art, it was such an honor. So I was receiving the award. The president at the time said, we're looking at these beautiful images of people with albinism around the globe. There's a universal message here. This is not just about albinism. This is about all differences. Would you ever come to one of our other family conferences that we represent and celebrate their differences? It's like, what a great idea, I'd love to. She said, well, we have a conference coming up, the Chromosome 18 Registry and Research Society. She looked at me and she said, well, you know, when you have an anomaly on your 18th chromosome, fashion photographer, never heard the words anomaly and chromosome in the same sentence prior to that moment. So I was forced to go back to I agreed to go, of course, it was in San Antonio, but I went back to those medical textbooks to find what a chromosome 18 anomaly looks like. And these were the images that I saw. It's mostly stillborn images, kids with cleft palates and trachs and feeding tubes and mobility issues. I'm thinking, this is terrifying. Albinism was so easy. But I went to that conference, and I walked into the auditorium, and there was a clown on stage making balloon animals. And I had these images burned in my head, thinking, how am I going to photograph these kids? And I was instantly surrounded by kids screaming with laughter. There were kids with cleft palates and trachs and feeding tubes and mobility issues, but there were kids, and there were kids having fun. I was like, where was that one giggle, that one smile when I was trying to research a chromosome 18 anomaly? These are some of the great kids that I met that first trip. This is the amazing Pauline, Sean, Ellington, the coolest kid I know, Remy. And they weren't just kids. This is Rebecca from Chicago. They were kids, they were adults, they were people. It's like, where was that humanity in those images? So we had such a blast photographing that whole weekend. Came back to my studio at the end of that weekend, and I got a call from Francis Collins, who was then the director of the National Human Genome Research Institute. They just finished mapping the people's genome. Very excited to do that. He invited me to create a photographic exhibition showing albinism, but the diversity within that diagnosis. And it was an exhibition that was going to launch at the Museum of Natural History in DC, and then travel to other Smithsonian sites globally. Really thrilling, really honored to do that. But I said, you know, I just had this amazing experience with the Chromosome 18 registry. There's a universal message here. This is about celebration of all differences. It means for everybody. So can we invite other groups to participate? And he very enthusiastically said yes. The first group that stepped up was the National Marfan Foundation. Marfan syndrome is a connective tissue disorder. You grow very, very tall. You're at risk of an aortic dissection. You have scoliosis. And that's how the images look in medical textbooks. And I understood the importance and the value of an image like that to present how does a connective tissue disorder present itself in clinical environments. So I thought, okay, I understand, but as an artist, there must be another way that I can present the same information, but adding a key ingredient that's missing. And of course, the key ingredient is Billy. The key ingredient is humanity. Yay. Yay. Just some of my great friends. This is Simone, who represents the National Down Syndrome Foundation of Italy. My good friend Caleb, living with achondroplasia dwarfism, wants to be the president of the United States or an actor, so I told him all about Ronald Reagan, and now he's thrilled that he can do both, and he will. Trust me. Keep your eyes and ears open for the amazing Caleb. Ronan with Prader-Willi syndrome. I always use this photograph because he reminds me of Frank Sinatra, and I love him. My gorgeous friend Lucas and his dad. Lucas is living with Fragile X syndrome, the leading familial genetic marker for autism. Great friends Kevin and his mom Patty, living with Duchenne muscular dystrophy. This actually brought Ryan and I together many years ago, about 15 years ago. We created so many programs with the Parent Project Muscular Dystrophy and many other advocacy organizations. Some of those programs are the Pearls Project, which is an online blog platform for our ambassadors around the globe to talk about life from their unique perspective. I just came back. We're traveling worldwide, working with kids. So as you know, when you have a diagnosis, you have your family, you have your community, you have your fast group, you have your specialists. When you're undiagnosed, you are alone. So we're traveling around the globe, bringing communities together to make sure no one feels alone. I go to medical schools. We're in more than half the medical schools in the country, not because I want to teach the science behind some of these genetic conditions, but realistically that I can pronounce arthrogryposis multiplex congenita, and I can spell it, I know what it means, and also because I hung out with PJ at a family conference, and PJ can't use his hands because of the type of arthrogryposis that he has, so his family calls his eating technique his Viking dive, because he'll go into his plate of mashed potatoes and he comes up, then he goes into his plate of peas and he comes up, and then he chases his sisters around the table with a face full of mashed potatoes and peas. You will never forget arthrogryposis multiplex congenita after that, because you'll never forget PJ. Now in the summer months, I go to all the family advocacy groups. I went to 22 this past summer. They start in June and go through August. And I bring local med students with me, and I shove them in daycare and lock the door on them, and I leave them in there, and I come back later on, and they always have like poop on their shoulder, like gum in their hair, but they're going to be better healthcare providers because they met these kids not in the clinical environment. They met these kids not in crisis. They met these kids being kids. That prompted a series of films that we created, Positive Exposure, called Frame, Faces Redefining the Art of Medical Education. Very brief films presenting all the basic hallmark characteristics of a certain diagnosis or a topic, but as presented by someone living that experience themselves, so placing front row and center in medical training, humanity, helping healthcare providers in training understand early in their training that it's never what you're treating, but of course, always who you're treating. We have a gallery in East Harlem. You are all invited to come and hang out. We're at the northern part of Central Park, right on Museum Mile. Come hang out. There's a multimedia gallery, performance space, lots of exhibitions going on there, lots of performances, and so you're all welcome to come. Just come anytime. We're there every day. So one of the goals for positive exposure from early days, for me anyway, was to replace these dehumanizing, demoralizing, grim images currently used in medical training. So now we're creating a platform which we're about to launch in the next month or so called To Redefine Beauty and the Textbook Beauty. It's called presenting opportunities for faculty and healthcare providers in training to utilize positive exposure, vibrant images instead of those scary medical textbooks. Here's gorgeous Lily, the amazing Kaylin living with Sturge-Weber syndrome, and of course Amir living with Angelman syndrome. We did a big project with Metropolitan Hospital in New York City. Thank you. And I got to really spend so much time with Amir and his family and other friends with Angelman syndrome, really creating, again, an opportunity to replace those scary images. And Amir's mom was so excited about being part of this program. And so it really kind of introduced me to Angelman syndrome. Got to hang out with my great friend Jasper in Colorado Springs and photograph Jasper with Angelman. So really kind of working with the communities. But then through Ryan Fisher, I was introduced to FAST. And we spent a whole afternoon in New York a few weeks ago meeting these gorgeous families. And they all came to the studio to be photographed. And one of the things that I felt so strongly that day when we were photographing, and they're all there and gorgeous and everybody was there, was the sense of community, the sense of love in that room, the sense of hope and fearlessness and just drive, and it was extraordinary. And when I came here yesterday, I arrived yesterday, I walked into this conference, and it's much larger than we did at the gallery in New York City. And that same love was there, that same community, that strength, that power, that hope for the future that we could do this. And the beautiful messaging behind this whole conference is to dream big. We're together, absolutely together. And I see it in this room, and I saw it all day when we were photographing, that we can do anything absolutely together, because it's all about us, not about just these kids. It's about all of us. We all belong here. And the idea behind this is we all share the exact same need. And it's a need to be seen, a need to be heard, a need to be loved, and a need to belong. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hey! Hey! Thank you.